Hey everyone, it's Tony. Today, I'm going to be releasing the Nadia Sabeh episode. Nadia is an expert in indoor farming and when it comes to building a controlled environment, indoor environment with indoor farming. And so what that means is she works with a lot of people who have grow operations with vegetables and fruits and other types of foods, and also including cannabis. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's definitely an interesting listen. And if you're looking at increasing your revenue as a air filtration product specialist or provider or manufacturer, you'll hear about how she works with some clients and some of the things that they're looking for. So check it out. Hope you enjoy. We do talk about the technical seminar, which was supposed to happen next week in Phoenix, Arizona. We did have to cancel that due to the coronavirus outbreak here. So just wanted to let you know that you can disregard any kind of promotions. I didn't try to delete that from this episode just because it was kind of interwoven in our conversation, and deleting it might break up the continuity of the episode. So anyway, I hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Dr. Greenhouse, or she's also known as Nadia Sabeh. So thanks so much, and be safe and take care. Hi, it's Tony Verhoeven with the National Air Filtration Association, and I'm sitting here with Nadia Sabeh, also known as Dr. Greenhouse. Dr. Greenhouse, or Nadia, we'll call her. Yeah, it would be kind of weird if I just called you Dr. Greenhouse the entire time. Yeah.
Some people like to call me Dr. Nadia, but you can call me Nadia.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Make sure we have it, hold it up here so we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, so Nadia is actually going to be speaking at our event coming up in Phoenix, Arizona. It's the NAFA Technical Seminar in Phoenix. And the title of your talk is Clearing the Air for Indoor Farming, indoor plant environments. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Indoor farming, indoor plant environments, controlled environment, agriculture. It's all the same thing, just different words.
Different words. Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to bring you on here. We'll share this on our podcast and on our channel here as well. But I wanted you, since you're here, we're here actually at the AHR ASHRAE show, AHR Expo in Orlando, which is why I'm a little hot. We're up a little misty here. So.
It's Orlando. It's tropical.
It is Orlando.
It's February and it's warm and humid.
That's right. And I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. So anyway, I wanted to share with everybody like what Nadia is going to be talking about, and give her just a few hints of what you're going to be talking about, because yesterday you spoke here, and I hear that it was standing room only.
It was. There are 215 seats in the room and a 250-person capacity for the room, and they were literally turning people away at the door. That is how into this topic people are in the HVAC and mechanical engineering industry. It's a really hot topic. And, I asked people, hey, raise your hand if you've actually designed a cannabis facility or an indoor farm. And only about 15 hands went up out of 250 people. So people, even if they're not in it, are really curious about what the challenges are and about how they might be able to impact the industry and get involved and make it a viable industry.
Right. So how important is air filtration in indoor farming, especially when it comes to growing operations, cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, indoor air quality is huge. I always say, for HVAC, we're really dealing with two pieces of the air. We're dealing with controlling the climate, the temperature, the humidity, but we're also trying to control the quality of the air, just like we would do with ventilation, where we want to make sure that we don't have too much CO2 that people are passing out and sleeping on the job, perhaps. With plants, we want to make sure that there's actually plenty of carbon dioxide because they use it for photosynthesis. So we don't actually want to filter that out if we can avoid it. But also, there's a lot of constituents in the air that are harmful to plants. So mold spores. We want to keep mold out of these rooms, especially if you're a cannabis farmer. You're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You have to go through rigorous lab testing if you're a cannabis grower. And they're looking for two things. They're looking for residual pesticides and they're looking for pests and molds. And so here these poor growers are trying to prevent having mold on their plants, but they can't use chemicals to knock them down. So having a really clean environment is really important. And so we need alternative ways than chemicals to knock those pests down. The other thing is actually what we might consider a human nuisance. So with cannabis, you know, the flowers actually create these volatile organic compounds that smell, have a really heavy smell. And so there's a lot of interest in figuring out how to mitigate odor before that air leaves a facility so that neighbors aren't going to complain and think that these, you know, that this is a nuisance to have this facility nearby. It's actually probably one of the biggest challenges that cannabis growers have, or one of the biggest hurdles to getting their projects accepted by their local jurisdictions is how are you going to mitigate odor? And I mean, it's a tough nut to crack, really. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about that and why that's so hard in my talk in Phoenix.
Great. So these are things. So if you're a business owner, if you're a distributor or manufacturer in the air filtration industry, obviously these are things that are going to be concerns of the, obviously your client who's going to hire you for some of this stuff. But it's also something you just need to be aware of when you go into some certain municipalities of, what are some of the issues that you're going to run into, and how can you help solve those problems, right? The NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? How can you help your clients become an accepted member and not blast that stuff out there and be a nuisance, right?
Exactly. And I think that growers out there, whether they're cannabis farmers or vertical farmers growing lettuce and basil, that they want to be good members of the community. You know, they're trying, you know, if you're a vertical farmer, you are trying to do agriculture and farming in your local community and create jobs and improve the nutrition of the food and that you're growing, so it doesn't have to be transported 3,000 miles away from California if you live in New York. So they're trying to do good for the community. Cannabis growers, you know, a lot of them believe in the medicine of the plant and in the value and history of the plant and how, you know, I don't know, humans and this cannabis plant have evolved together. If you're sort of in that philosophy, and so they don't want to be a nuisance either. They feel like they're, you know, giving something back to their community, and they want to be a good neighbor. They just need to figure out how to be a better neighbor when odor is such a pain, I guess.
What are some of the are there unique things that, you know, indoor farming people run into with regards to filtration that, you know, maybe like one of our members might run into in the manufacturing that they wouldn't run into in the manufacturing? You mentioned like CO2, right? So there's probably humidity and a CO2 kind of balance that needs to be in there. But what other sorts of things that people need to be aware of? So, you know,
probably three of the biggest challenges that indoor farmers have in general is humidity control. These plants generate a lot of moisture in the room. Basically, you irrigate a plant and 98% of that water gets evaporated back into the atmosphere. And so how do we actually remove that moisture? So I'm talking a lot to manufacturers and other HVAC designers, and how do we dehumidify without using an inordinate amount of energy to do it. So that's one factor. Another one is just good air mixing. So we have good temperature and humidity. We've figured out how to control the sensible and the latent loads. But now how do we create a uniform environment everywhere, especially when we have a vertical farm and we have all these plants that are stacked on top of each other, you know, in this 30-foot room, and there's like 12 layers of plants. How do we move the air from point A to point B? And the third one is this air quality issue, is how do we filter out the bad and keep the good? And, you know, I've talked to some filtration companies and they're like, oh, we can remove CO2. And I'm like, no, that's not what we want to do. We actually want to keep the CO2. And so, you know, it's But then we have to deal with regulators, right? And with code officials who are so used to ventilation for human environments that they're not thinking about what the plants need. And if we say that you cannot enrich these rooms with carbon dioxide, then the plants can't photosynthesize and they can't grow, and then we can't eat or, maybe consume your cannabis. So that is definitely, those three challenges in general are pretty tough.
Excellent. Yeah. What are, as far as your talk is concerned, what are maybe like just a couple takeaways that some people are going to come away with?
Yeah. So, for my talk, I'm going to kind of distinguish between particle filtration and chemical filtration. So this idea of what do we need to filter out of the air in terms of particles, right? And really growers are concerned about mold spores, maybe pollen drifting from other farms. So we need to really remove larger particles from the air. And then this chemical filtration thing. Is there something that we can do other than these recirculated activated carbon filters that maybe generate a lot of dust, or maybe they're not as effective when it's humid in the room, right? Because we kind of have an elevated humidity in these rooms. So are there other technologies that we can use? And I'm also going to go through some technologies that maybe are not so useful, that are being sold to growers. And, they may not know any better. You may not know any better. We may not know any better. And there's a lot of research that really needs to be done for this industry. It's such a nascent, young industry that we just haven't figured out what it is that we need to control in the air. Are some things good and some things bad? Can we measure some things? I mean, these odors, these volatile organic compounds are found in such small quantities that I always ask the question, how are we supposed to control something that we can't measure? So we're going to talk a lot about the research behind that. And I'm going to basically have this call to action. Hey guys, help us do some research. Help us develop the technology that we need to knock down those organic compounds.
Fantastic. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become Dr. Greenhouse?
So I became Dr. Greenhouse. I got the nickname when I was getting my PhD at the University of Arizona. So I was studying evaporative cooling and ventilation and water use efficiency for growing tomatoes in a greenhouse, and comparing that to, say, the water use efficiency of growing tomatoes in a field. So I gave this public workshop. I really like giving workshops and teaching the community. And we had a local weather station actually come and interview us to promote the workshop. So, we introduce ourselves and the weatherman says, "Hey, Nadia, I hope you don't mind, but, around the studio, we nicknamed you Dr. Greenhouse." And we just decided this was marketing gold. So immediately I created a website, and and so that's where Dr. Greenhouse comes from. That was in 2007. So when I finally decided to open up my business, it was obvious it was going to be Dr. Greenhouse. Well, after I got my PhD, I decided, I want to learn about controlled environments for humans, not just for plants. I want to see if there are HVAC systems out in the commercial and residential and institutional world that one day maybe I could bring back to agriculture. So I worked as a mechanical engineer, first in Tucson and then in California for about 10 years. And then, people were just knocking on our door. People were trying to grow plants indoors. We were in California, so of course there was cannabis, but people were trying to vie for these licenses in New York and in these other states. And so they were calling us. And then I was, talking to people from my past in agriculture, and they're trying to grow lettuce and tomatoes in these warehouses and asking if we could help. And so, I did that for a couple of years at the last company, and just realized, if I really want to dedicate my life to the pursuit of this industry, I have to do this on my own. And so this was the birth of Dr. Greenhouse about 3 years ago. And now we have a couple of engineers in the office. And we've designed over 70 indoor farms and greenhouses in the last 3 years all over the country, 25 different states, 3 Canadian provinces, a few other countries here and there. It's been a ride. It's been
fantastic.
Wild. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate you helping us understand what your talk's going to be about, a little bit about your background, a little bit more about the industry that you're in, or that we're all in, and look forward to seeing you in Phoenix, March 31st through April 2nd.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this issue. I was telling Tony, I'm just for one more second, I was telling Tony that, I always have a slide or two about air quality, but I never get to dive deep. And this is my opportunity to talk to the audience that needs to hear what's going on with air quality and air filtration. So I'm just so excited to have this captive audience.
Yeah, you had mentioned when we were starting to kind of prepare to sit down here, you had mentioned something to the effect of, some of your talks that you do are, just about air handling, and just, some are deep dive into air quality, and so air filtration, and in our group is going to allow you kind of a little bit deeper dive into this group. But, in indoor farming and cannabis especially, again, there's probably lots of big bucket areas that you can kind of speak about and go deep into. So
absolutely. I can talk for hours on this subject. Thank you for giving me an extra 15 minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. All right. It was nice to meet you.
Thanks, Tony.
We'll see you in a couple months.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care. For more information about how the National Air Filtration Association's membership, networking, education, and certifications can improve your career and business, visit nafahq.org.